And welcome back. We're entering into our final conversation for this morning, and we have with us members of the Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development. We have with us the president, Billie Leslie, as well as well-known Elito Arceo, who's the past chair, and we have Miguel Alamilla. Gentlemen, let's start off the conversation by telling us what the Cayo Rosario development is about, and in a nutshell, probably what is the primary concern that you guys share with this project.
Good morning. Just a little clarification now. Elito was the first chair of the Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development. Myself and Miguel, we co-chaired next for that association, and then currently we have Ms. Rebecca Arceo, which is the current president of the Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development.
A woman in charge, love it.
That's right. The Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development has many organizations that are part of that group. For example, the San Pedro Business Association, the San Pedro Tour Operators Association, the San Pedro Tourist Guide Association, and the list goes on and on and on. Citizens, many of San Pedro, are very vocal in that group. But we're here looking at one specific project, the Cayo Rosario Project. Cayo Rosario is a small little mangrove marsh island on the west side of Ambergris Caye. This island has a proposed project which is, in our concern, too large to be sustained on that little specific island. An island that has mangroves, and what many don't see is that the center of that island is a lagoon. The center of that island is a lagoon.
Yeah. Nice shot right there.
If you do make visits to that area, you will see that most of the time there is only one little portion of that island that is with land. The rest is all water. The rest is all water. Our concern is that this development, because we can understand that it is a privately owned island, yes, and that the person has a right to apply for development. But our main concern is the project itself is calling for development outside of the island. And all that outside of the island is part of our marine protected area. It's part of Holchan. We are concerned because the development goes on one of the most delicate areas for fishery. This is a nursery to many fish, especially the protected fish species like bonefish, tarpon, and permit, an area where many fly fishermen come to carry out their fishing practices there, and all in a sustainable fashion, catch and release, catch and release. So that is our concern of building all of these structures. Part of the program involved that this project do consultations on the nearby communities, San Pedro mainly. On our first public consultation, there was only one person in favor of, and all the rest were against because of the structures that are outside of his property.
Yeah, I want to just stick a pin there so we can explore that further. I know there's an image to show what the plans currently are. So the original proposed idea for Cayo Rosario was for 2 sets of over-the-water structures, which means like bungalows, there we go, bungalows over the water itself. And the result that we see on the right is what happened after the consultation. It's now only 1 set, and it seems to be that there's more development on the island versus the previous plan. So one would say that your concerns were listened to.
There has been some compromise.
No. Look at it closely. The first picture shows two outriggers with the over-the-water structures on it. Look closely at the next one. There is one outrigger, many more houses on the outrigger, but look at the island itself. It's the same amount of buildings over the water. It's just that one outrigger was removed, but the buildings are over the water on the island itself. Look at it closely when you compare. That's right. That's right. So his amount of over-the-water structures never changed. All he did is remove an outrigger and then he put the buildings over the water. But a key point here we'd like to point out to the general public is this. When you look closely at that, the island itself, registered when it was surveyed, is a 6-acre island. On the second one, he's claiming that the island is now 10-acre. And you could see it by the black demarcated island area now. Now he's claiming that that's the island now. He is claiming that that is the original island and he wants to fill in to claim back because it was eroded.
So,
but it is wrong. It is false information, and it is, in our view, sad that the entity that should protect the Belizean interest, which is the Department of Environment, have qualified people that are not seeing what the normal person is seeing.
Now, and I want to ask you, because many times when we hear objections to developments of any kind, one of the first questions people have is, how are we going to develop and have exclusive destinations like other world-renowned places if we don't allow for things like these to be built? So how do you challenge the people who say you're against development?
Can I add some context to this and maybe some historical overview as to why we are here?
Yeah.
And maybe that could answer your question. We've talked about the island, Cayo Rosario, but it's not only the island, it's what is around the island, you know, and there are important habitats within the island, but also out on the marine portion of that area. And the importance of that is that you have sandbanks, we call shoals or bajos in San Pedro. That's the local name, they call them bajos. And those sandbanks are important aggregating sites for specific fish species like the bonefish, the permit. And that's where those fly fishermen go and take tourists to do their catch and release activities, right? And in 2010, we started a process because those areas, even though they're in the marine portion of the island, they were sold to private interests. Government reacquired those properties around 2011, and they came to us, to ACCSD, the Ambergris Caye Concerned Citizens for Sustainable Development, and told us, you know, put those, we have reacquired those marine areas, put them back, put them into a marine reserve status. So we started the process. It took about 3-4 years because we did consultations, scientific studies, mapping, all that work was done. And those areas were identified that need to be protected for that purpose, for the fly fishing species, the bonefish and the tarpon. And now, you know, we could see, in terms of sustainable use and sustainable development, we could see marine protected areas as part of the development process because they help in this kind of development in tourism, and sustainable use of those marine environments. Now, this developer is proposing to build over the water structure in areas that have been identified through a process, through a consultative process, have been identified to be important habitats for those marine species.
Wow. So how was it, if it was reacquired, which was excellent, I mean, that has to be commendable, how was it reversed? I don't understand.
Well, it hasn't been reversed.
But
there is a proposal out there to build over.
No, you said that, if I understand you rightly,
the island itself was not reacquired. The island itself remained private, but the marine portion was reacquired. The bajos, the shoals, they were reacquired and put into a marine reserve. And that specific area is a conservation area.
Yeah.
It's a no-take zone, but we only allow, it only catch and release is allowed within that area.
Can I ask this? We have authorities who have expertise and are qualified with the people, the proper personnel, the training and the equipment to assess what the impact is. The environmental impact assessment has already been done, including consultations that you've spoken about. And the experts have said, listen, it appears, if it has been approved, that the concerns, even though they might be valid, are sufficient to affect us to stop this project. Why can't we trust the people who are qualified after they have made their due diligence, which they have already done, to say, listen, man, we as experts say, you guys love this area, but the science is saying a bit different. Why can't we trust the people who are in authority, who have done their work?
In terms of the EIA?
In terms of the entire project.
Because
and
the
the
EIA is a process, right? And the EIA is supposed to be a scientific document, including biological, social, and all those aspects, right? But we believe that certain portions of the EIA are not correct. The due diligence and the work was not properly done. If I could mention one aspect of it, for the purpose of time, you know, the fish surveys that were done there. If you look at the EIA, there's no bonefish, there's no permit. But it's because of the methodology they use to do the assessment. It's not, that methodology is not proper for that habitat, that marine habitat. They use the AGRA methodology, which is the Atlantic, Gulf, and Caribbean Rapid Reef Assessment, reef. There's no coral reef there. And you know, in coral reef, there's an explosion of life. There's a lot of fish. Yeah. Here, the fish are more sparse, and these fish are migrate to feed, to reproduce. Yeah. And that's when you find them there. And if you do an agro assessment, you'll find no bonefish, but you need to use different methodologies for those species.
And that's what we are saying, is we are challenging the experts. We are challenging the experts because we have done trips there to take Minister Figueroa, the CEO, and show them that you don't have to be a scientist to see that fish is there, birds are there. And they were amazed of what they saw there. Yeah. While, as Miguel has said, they use the wrong system. So that's what we want to challenge them. In their presentations, what they used was incorrect. We don't agree that the experts are doing fair diligence to our country. Yeah. That is what we don't agree. We are not against development. I'd like to echo that again. Yeah. The Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development is not against. We are for sustainable development. And what we have seen here is this developer is proposing to build over delicate bajos which sustain other types of living in San Pedro. Yeah. When we speak about one specific type of sport fishing, which is the fly fishing, which hundreds of people come down to do. We have countless numbers of videos and accounts of people catching what we call in that type of fishing the Grand Slam, catching a bonefish, a tarpon, and a permit on the same day. That is something which is very difficult to do any part of the world. Yet here in Belize, especially around Cayo Rosario, it is possible on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. And that is why we're saying the experts didn't do the right job. When we talk about sport fishing, yes, the fisherman is bringing the cry. He's heading the forefront of saying, no, I don't want this development. But it's not only about the fisherman. When a fly fishing customer comes to this country, we talk about customs, immigration, they have employees, secretaries, so forth. Then you have the bus driver, the pilot, that company has people that work. Then you get to your hotel. So when you talk about direct people, just to go catch one bonefish. Then you have the indirect people, which would be somebody has to grow the chickens, somebody has to grow the fruits. So when you talk a total number of persons that are involved with just one gentleman to come catch what we refer to as the $1 million fish, there is more economic value for us to save it, keep it there, allow the fisherman to catch it and release it, than to allow one single developer to destroy the livelihood of a third of our country's population that are involved with fishing. But yet, the poor fisherman gets the blame because he's on the forefront saying, hey, slow down this development. But he's speaking for a third of our country.
Well, actually, you know, you say it's fishermen, but there's a lot of support in your cause in trying to change what is being proposed at Cayo Rosario. You have the BTIA on board. You have different associations on board. A number of people. Tell me all who have joined in on this effort to say.
Well, we have the, like Billie mentioned, we have the Tour Guide Association. We have Oceana. We have several. We have Audubon. I guess we've had several organizations. It's many of them that have actually are coming to our cause and listen to our concerns. And I just want to touch on what Miguel said a little while ago. He said that the different methodology they use to that. If you go to the area, I hope there, wherever scientists had went, you can literally see the fish from your boat. I mean, how they actually will miss that. You know, it's amazing. And this is, like you just said, you know, these are people educated and, you know, well-versed in their field. To go do that, and we're like, wow. And even when we had the public consultations, beside people voicing the concerns, we've written to them by email or in their Dropbox, and we don't know if those concerns are actually taken into consideration when they had their meeting.
Can I ask a question just to be absolutely clear? We're talking about the overwater structures that require a lot of movement and a change in what would be the natural habitat for the fish that is being used for fly fishing, right?
And the dredging.
So there's and that's what I was going to get at. To build the structures, you need to dredge, which means you'll dig up all the sand.
55,000 cubic meters.
You will also be adding on to the island, because you spoke of the difference between the 7 to 10 acre. You'll be adding on to the island more. So you will change the entire ecosystem in that area, and that's your primary concern. Exactly. The second is that is it a part of Hulchan or just it has proximity to Hulchan? The water is...
The marine part is inside the marine reserve, and where they're proposing to build the over-the-water structures is inside a conservation zone of the Hulchan Marine Reserve.
And what the sand that they want to remove is the actual bajo. It's the actual shallow area where the bonefish are feeding. That's what they want to move. And how much are they proposing to move?
55,000 meters.
Wow. I'm trying to get some clarity here. So that is your primary concern. Are you opposed to a development on Cayo Rosario, or is it just the overwater structures that you...
We see that the EIA process carries a consultation, right? A public consultation. That is where you give the opportunity to the general public and you consult. You ask, who am I affecting? Why are they being affected? That's what they want to learn in that public consultation. Yet, the way the Department of the Environment runs these consultations, they come and they tell you what they'll do, and there's nothing you could do. You have many other parts of that project that are not viable for that area. For example, look how many buildings are being proposed. Each one has a toilet. Where is that water going? In their proposal, across from that island to mainland Ambergris Caye, they want to run pipes of sewer from there to the next end. What happens is if a vessel passes and breaks one of those pipes? What will happen to that area? In an EIA, the proper way should have been, we want to propose this, and here's the two options that we have. Which would you think would be best? Or if the public has better ways to do it, we want to hear so we can apply the best practices. but it's not conducted that way. We are upset of how the Department of the Environment brings in this public consultation. He's paid for by the developer, so obviously he has to do what the developer wants.
Yeah.
And to make matters worse, and our system of government have to change and look at these things. Who heads NEAC? The Department of the Environment. So on all cases, you go and you visit the Department of the Environment, you talk to the head, and you pay them, and they do what you want. This system is not correct.
Gentlemen, San Pedro has the distinction of being part of the catalyst that led to the moratorium or the ban on offshore drilling. You stood up and you demanded from your area representative in the most vocal way possible, at a consultation as well, that we now have a ban on offshore oil drilling. I know you've taken your plea to your area representative, who's also the Minister of Tourism. What are you hearing? What are you hearing as a response? Because in fact, the environmental impact assessment, which is supposed to look at what might be the potential damage of the project, has been approved by NEAC, the appraisal committee for this. So it's almost like you've gotten the first green light to go ahead.
Well, 2 green lights.
2 green lights. You got the EIA approval, and you got to pass through NEAC. So time is running out. If the developer wants to push forward legally, he's allowed to.
Okay. On a legal base, there are 2 bodies challenging this in court. You have our group, the Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development, and we're going to go legal. And also, the Hulchan Marine Board is also taking the case legal, because we feel that the process wasn't done right. We feel that if we are to go through as a country to accept development, let's do the proper things that are written. I think if we recall on one of the cases taken by BTIA against that island that was proposed or is now going through, they were taken to court, and NEAC or the government lost because of not doing the proper procedures. And that set a precedent.
No, it was Harvest Key.
Right.
But it was still built, but
it set a precedent.
it did.
Because NEAC has been told in that case that they cannot bypass the system. In their first result, NEAC demanded the developer to do another public consultation, which was not done. Yet they accepted the result. And that gives you ground to go and take it into court.
And challenge it.
You go to challenge it.
One of the challenges.
Yeah. There is no group, maybe a few individuals looking at, okay, it's going to create jobs, right, that support this development. We have many organizations that are away from San Pedro that are afraid that it will set a precedent. When you reserve or you protect an area, that is what you're doing, is telling development, this is protected, this is not for development. Then why will you go and break away from what you have just done? You have Turnip Islands, you have all other areas that are protected, that if you allow one, then you'll have to allow the rest.
No, my question is this. You said that it's one man against 1/3 the population of Belize, but maybe it's a bit hyperbolic, because this is a significant investment. This is not a $100 investment. This must be millions of dollars, and each of those 104 bungalows is one guest. And so the same way you say that a fisherman, I'm being devil's advocate here, but the same way that you say that one fisherman, fly fisherman, comes in, is serviced by all these people, you multiply that by 104 for this project, including all the people who are actually on the premises. Now, I want to go back to Marlene's question, which is curious to me, because I wasn't sure I understood what your position was in terms of, are you against any sort of development on this island? No. Or is there a way that Belize can still benefit from the development whatever it is, because it's a privately owned island,
If I may interject.
and still have sustainable development? Is there a way that we can
is
get
the
a compromise?
Key. That's the key, sustainable development and sustainable use of resources. What we believe is that this development does not conform to that. This is in no way sustainable use or sustainable development, right? And
why?
Because of the magnitude of it, and it infringes within a protected areas that has gone through a process. We took over 3 years of consultation of work to include this as part of the marine reserve. The EIA process for them took less than a year, 1 consultation. And through our process, we agreed and we extended the marine reserve. That in itself tells you, the people are for it. We are for sustainable development, and it contributes in the form of catch and release. A born fish is worth more alive than dead. If you are destroying this marine fish, its habitat, you are destroying the fishery, practically, right? So what sustainable development allows us to have long-term use of those resources for long-term. This is projecting a short-term use.
Just interject a little bit. When this process started for us to include those BOWs, it was on behalf of the minister and them, to actually do it, right? Asked us to go ahead and start the process to include that to be part of the Holcha Marine Reserve.
Is the best case scenario, and I want to ask this question directly, is the best case scenario to reacquire the entire island so that we don't have this problem again? Is that what the end goal is?
It's an expensive scenario.
Yeah. As Miguel had said earlier, some of these islands were acquired. There wasn't the proper funds to be able to acquire 2 of those major ones, Cayo Rosario and Blacador. And we have been against arguing with the government with the Blacador development as well. And you find that the Cayo Rosario is piggybacking on that same idea. John Turley just looked at it, well, if those guys were given the green light to do over the water structures, I'll do the same. So all he's doing is proposing this development, and now that he gets that, he will go out and start to sell things. But what we are saying is that that island does not sustain that magnitude of development. We are not against him developing his island so long as he develops it in a way that that island could sustain it.
Can I ask one more question?
That it doesn't impact what is taking place around the reserve that it exists within.
That's right.
Can I ask one more question, which is, I was asking off air, I'm sure that there is another very popular location. I was asking if it's Bora Bora, where there is similar touch structures over the water, and it's a major tourist destination. But the developer is no fool either. No man who has, no person, no company who has that amount of money to be able to make that investment, which surely will give some return, did not do some due diligence and hasn't looked at other projects in other places that it has worked and probably worked sustainably. Don't you think that there is some way that, because it works at other places, that it could work here at the magnitude that it has?
But a key aspect of sustainable development, it's not only about the environment and the economy of the area, but also the cultural aspects, right? What happened in Bora Bora? I'm sure there are fishermen there. I'm sure there are fishermen there, as what we have here. So we need to look at the cultural aspects of the area also. That's sustainable development. Take that into account, what the fishermen want, what the tour guides, the tour operators, the communities, and we feel that was not taken into account the way it should. One public consultation is not enough for a project of this magnitude. So if we want to say Belize is a sustainable development, we practice that. We need to do what we say we're doing, right? And that's key. And I think that I don't know exactly what happened in Bora Bora, but I would say that fishermen were not taken into account because you are taking away their waters that they use traditionally over time to build mega resorts.
They also don't have the World Heritage Site that we do. And,
Well,
I think you
well,
have to.
one line in there is most people like to compare, but they forget one major thing. None of them have a barrier reef. None of them have a barrier reef. And that is the key there. because all these habitats are important to sustain our barrier reef.
Yeah.
So yes, 100 and so many people will own these bungalows, but how many more have you outplaced to what they are traditionally accustomed to living? We went from coconut farming to commercial fishing, and now we're embracing tourism because of one reason. It is sustainable to our coral reef. And people are forgetting that. They're looking at, oh, how many money we're going to get out of this, and yes, but you will damage what we have inherited. It is our duty as adults today to protect that reef for our kids. It is not our duty to go and make money today and then our kids have, well, there used to be a coral reef in Belize. That's not our duty. Our duty is we have to hold hands together. Lawyers, marine biologists, scientists, let's get together with the community and do the right thing. Sustain that coral reef for many, many years.
Yeah.
The coral reef has enemies that is hard to control. Climate change, global warming, that's what the coral reef has to be, not human and development. Development should not be a part of the damage to our reef. We should learn to do the right thing. When we look at that development, those guys did not do the right job.
And you are
The
so
DOE.
convinced that you are taking it to court.
Yes, we are. And both groups. And both groups. I know that because I form part of both groups. San Pedro Tour Guide Association is a part of the Holchan Marine Board and also part of the Ambergris Caye Citizens for Sustainable Development.
Can I ask a question before we wrap up? I mentioned before how your activism was a very instrumental part in addressing the offshore drilling issue. Have you gotten a sense that lobbying with your area representative, lobbying publicly as you are here, may potentially get you a rethink on this issue before you have to go through a very expensive court process?
That's right. In all cases, we are not only just saying we're going to court. Recently, you will see a public statement came out from our mayor, who is against this type of development, not only on a protected area, but he's against that type of development in our delicate lagoons, shallow bajos, even around. And he has publicly stated that.
He actually went to say totally against.
That's right.
Wow.
So we are going to all of the different groups. We will, very near future, you will see the Turnef group publicly stating that as well. So it is not only in San Pedro, but in San Pedro, we fight for sustainability because somebody has to protect that reef. Our professionals are not doing it. Yeah. They're only thinking about short-term economic gain when we are thinking of tomorrow's children. That is what we are about.
Well, thank you for coming in and explaining to us your cause, and of course, we will keep on following this issue.
We thank you for allowing us to be here.
All right, we're going to go ahead and take our final break now, and when we come back, we'll have our wrap-up, so stay tuned.